So, exposure is an effective treatment for retroactive jealousy. Choosing to lean in to those thoughts and feelings about your partner's past, even those most uncomfortable feelings about their sexual history. Exposure response prevention is really helpful for people with all kinds of OCD type struggles. But when the thoughts revolve around another person, your partner, coming up with useful exposures can be quite tricky. It's not like touching the thing with the germs or going to the scary place. We need to come up with ways to deliberately provoke the thoughts and uncertainties and even the judgments without necessarily having to get our partner involved. And then with retroactive jealousy, when the focus is on our partner's sexual past, it's even more tricky because partners of people with retroactive jealousy, they've had enough of their past being dragged up all the time. Partners can be supportive, they often are, but we have to be respectful in how we go about using their past for exposure therapy. Some of the things we might consider as exposures, like maybe looking at an old photo of our partner with their ex so we can get those feelings going, well, maybe we've been doing that already as a compulsion. My mind has been locked onto her past all day, and now I'm on Instagram looking through her past to try and get some clarity and relief. These are the things we're trying to stop doing. Exposure response prevention is exposing ourselves to the trigger, having the thoughts, and then letting the feeling pass without doing anything to try and stop the thoughts or make it feel better. Not looking up the past or asking about the past or replaying stuff in our minds, being able to leave it alone. Let it pass. So imaginal exposure comes in really useful here. Retroactive jealousy has us using or misusing our imagination to keep replaying scenarios about our partner's past. So we may as well use our imagination to get out of this obsession. Because you can go anywhere in your imagination, as you've probably found, right into the details. We'll do some of that deliberately and therapeutically. No need to actually involve our partners at all. So here's an example of the kind of exposure we might come up with. Now in therapy, I create these with my clients, making sure it's sufficiently triggering, but not too triggering. And we can learn to do this ourselves too. It's like a script, a story, and it's all in the present tense. I'm going to a dinner party with my girlfriend and some of her friends, and her ex is coming along. Well, I call him an ex. They had this hot, casual relationship before we met. They're all part of this friend group. And we arrive at the party and we sit at the dinner table, and he sat right opposite me, and my girlfriend is right next to me. I can't swap seats, I can't get away, and it's a small group, and I need to stay cool and calm. He's good looking, he's funny, and he's confident, and he seems really comfortable being at the party, single, available. He chats, he smiles, and he jokes with me and my girlfriend, and she seems really happy to see him. And I wonder what connection they had, or might still have. And all our other friends around the table, they could see this play out. They all know how sexually compatible they were, all the fun they had together. Whoa! What do you think? Would this press a retroactive jealousy button for you? And just to make sure, this reminds me that I'll never really know what they had or what future social events he might come along to. Now, all this might be realistic or not, but that's not the point. It just needs to be realistic enough to give us the feeling, the discomfort. These friends probably wouldn't set up this seating plan, and they might not even invite him, but who knows? For our purposes, they do. So I read this script. I go there in my imagination. And what am I not going to do? Compulsions. Not asking for assurance or talking to my girlfriend about it. Not ruminating on it. Not thinking about this guy or telling myself any further stories about him or my girlfriend's past. And if I notice I've triggered that back and forth of she did it, but it doesn't matter, but she did it, does she still like him, but it doesn't matter, then I should get my attention back to the here and now. I'm accepting the thought and the feeling, but I'm not pursuing it. That's what I'm practicing here. Response prevention. And there are mindful ways to help us do this. Other kinds of scripts I might come up with my clients could be, I go to the hairdresser and my husband's ex works there now and she does my hair. She's pretty, she's really funny, and she asks me how he is. And when I mention it to him later, he seems to light up. Or I'm with my girlfriend and I notice she's on Snapchat and she's smiling and laughing at something, and then she puts her phone face down. And I'll never know for sure who or what she was just looking at, etc. So little scripts Where am I? Who am I with? What am I doing? And we make it juicy. Some details that tap into the uncertainty or the reality about our partner's past. We can make it as detailed as we like and leave it open at the end. I realise I'll never fully know everything about their past, which is true, you know, it's their past. And the practice is to read it a couple of times a day, taking my time to really picture it and feel whatever I feel. Discomfort, uncertainty, frustration, judgment, anger. Top tip, you've probably got a recording app on your phone. Read the script slowly and clearly into the app, maybe a couple of times, and then listen to it every day for a week. Listen to it at different times in different places, because these thoughts, they can pop up anywhere, so this is good practice. Incorporate this into your day-to-day. Now, you can record yourself a voice message on WhatsApp and listen to that back, but make sure you send it to yourself. So go careful with that one. Now, it's possible to do exposures the wrong way or not effectively enough. So here's a few guidelines for getting the most benefit. We want to make sure the situation, the scenario, presses our retroactive jealousy buttons and sufficiently. It provokes the uncertainty we have about our partner's past. And we start light, something that gives us a bit of that feeling, and then we work our way up. Having the feeling, not reacting to it. If it's too much too soon, no worries. We pick something a bit lighter, something less provoking, more doable. And we might work up to a worst case scenario script. I discovered that my partner had more sexual partners than I ever thought, and they all live around us in our town. We exaggerate it deliberately, ramping up the uncertainty. I know I'll spend the rest of my life not knowing. We're not doing this to be cruel to ourselves, and I know it can sound counterintuitive. But we've got to get our sensitivity to these thoughts and imaginings down. Get that sense of panic down. And we do that through gradual exposure, learning how to pass the time so the panic peaks and subsides by itself. We want to do the exposures for long enough detail, enough listens. Maybe listen and envisage for 10 minutes or keep listening for longer. It's not just a quick white knuckle dip in and out again. We want to do it for long enough to have the feeling, and then to feel it start to subside. And that might take a while, especially at first. We want to see this as a positive learning experience. With retroactive jealousy, it's very natural to want to avoid these intrusive thoughts, to push them away. And leaning in can feel a bit scary. What if I trigger myself for the rest of the day? What if I have a big, massive reaction? That's all part of the exposure. Embracing this uncertainty, realizing that we can tolerate it long enough for it to pass. We want some consistency every day, sticking with it. Think of it like one of those listening courses for a new language. You do a bit every day, you make time for it, and it's repetitive. Once the novelty wears off, it's a bit of a grind. You don't always feel like doing it, but you keep it up because you know it stretches you. You stick with the script every day for a week, maybe two, and then move up to a different one. It can get boring, and that's actually a positive. That's the anxious arousal coming down. It gets old, it gets boring. My intrusive thoughts can be boring. I don't need to engage with them. That's an interesting insight. In the script, we don't want any get-out clauses or softeners. No, and then I felt fine. Or, then my girlfriend told me everything was good. No, that's either false comfort or it opens up something to ruminate on. But why did she say that, etc. We want to hit the spot, sufficiently press the button, but we don't need to get this 100% right, because perfectionism and is this working, that can start to creep in. Every exposure session is a chance to practice. It's not a pass-fail challenge. And just like that language course, you learn from your mistakes. If you didn't do compulsions, that's great. If you did a different compulsion or you did ruminate on it, okay, that's an insight. We've learned something for next time. So the goal isn't to get to the point where you can think about your partner's past and feel completely neutral. No, you can still feel uncertain or insecure or judgy or whatever, but it's fleeting. You feel it very temporarily. And if you do an exposure enough and consistently for a week or two, you'll start getting that shift. And it's a nice thing to experience. So is it best to do exposures with the guidance of a therapist? Yes, they bring their experience and they help keep it on track. But we can absolutely learn how to do all this as self-help too. Is there more to overcoming retroactive jealousy than doing Imaginal exposures? Yes. We do some preparatory work. We get clear on the themes and the underlying feelings that keep coming up for you. And we see if there's any other factors, such as depression or trauma, that we should address. We're not going to start leaning into intense exposures if we're depressed. Exposure is probably the most active ingredient of retroactive jealousy therapy, but it's not the only ingredient. The insights of doing exposure response prevention stick with us. It's not a one and done treatment, it's an attitude towards the thoughts that we can keep up. Leaning into the uncertainties and struggles of our lives, our relationships, and being so much less pushed around by our thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves. I hope this gives you some useful insight into imaginal exposures for retroactive jealousy and how to get the most from them. And thank you for watching.